Good morning, ข้าพเจ้าพี่ and fellow student. Today we will be presenting about Steve M model of Thailand. So without further ado, let's begin with social culture.
So let's begin with the socio-cultural. Let us look at the language. Standard Thai is an official language of Thailand. It is widely spoken in the central region. Most people who live around Bangkok speak Standard Thai daily, while people in rural areas in other regions speak languages in a domestic setting that are significantly different from Standard Thai. For example, people in northeast Thailand speak ASEAN dialect, which is influenced by Laos. People in the north speak Khmer, and people in the south speak Pak Thai. Next, let's move on to ethnic group. The ancient kingdom of Thailand had conquered many lands. As a result, modern Thailand contains people with different cultures, religions, and linguistic backgrounds. The large majority of Thailand's population is the Thai group. Another major group is the ASEAN people, who are a close relative of Laos. However, there are also various non-Thai people. For example, Mon, Chinese, and Malay, who speak a dialect of Malay, Chinese, and other languages of the Austroasiatic family. Next, religion. Thailand has a Buddhist population of roughly 94.6%, a Muslim population of 4.3%, and a Christian population of 1%. Traditional ideas about ancestral and natural spirits have been absorbed into the Buddhist cosmology, and Buddhism in Thailand is heavily impacted by them. The majority of Thais install spirit house, so-called San Prapum, which are small residents outside their homes, where they believe household spirits live. Now let's move on to Muay Thai. In Thailand, Muay Thai is the most popular sport and culture. It is a weapon of war that has been used for a long time. In addition, Muay Thai also adopts the art of 8 limbs, which refers to the use of kick, elbows, knees, and sweeps. Since World War I, Muay Thai has evolved into a combat sport that is loved and practiced all over the world. And what makes Muay Thai different from other martial art is the Wai Kru Ram Muay pre-fight ritual. Wai Kru simply means paying respect to teachers, and Ram Muay means traditional boxing dance. The Sarama music, which is a traditional Thai rhythmic music, is played as the ritual is performed. The ritual begins with fighters walking anti-clockwise in the ring while paying respect to the teachers. Then they walk to the center of the ring and begin the fight. Now let's move on to architecture. There are 2 types of architecture in Thailand, the secular Thai architecture and the modern Thai architecture. Firstly, the secular Thai architecture. Thailand is well known for its traditional houses on stilts, which are built on bamboo or wood. The upper level is for resting, while the lower level is for storage. The secular Thai architecture follows the process of ancient principles of material preparation, which refers to the use of trees in construction, the soil underneath the house, and how employees are informed. Secondly, the modern Thai architect. Thailand has also adopted modern architectural styles from the West. For example, in Bangkok, you can see high skyscrapers and massive shopping malls, such as Elephant Building, Silom's Mahanakot, and Bayok Tower. Now, Kitisak will talk about the culture and other aspects of socio-cultural.
Hi, today I'm going to be talking about Thai culture and custom. So Thailand, the land of smile. This phrase is known all over the world as we speak about Thailand. Thai people are known to smile no matter how they are feeling. They use a smile to convey many things, not just emotion. For example, to convey a message that it's okay, or in Thai phrase, "mai pen lai," or a smile might just to greet or to say hi to others. This is why Thailand is noticed for its kind and friendly people. So Thai people respect Buddhism and the king very much because throughout Thai history, Buddhism and the monarchy have been seen as an emblem of order and stability, and they continue to do so today. Thai flag has 3 colors. 2 of them represent religion and monarchy. Thai people are very careful with what they say about the king and religion, both in front or behind the society, because any wrong move that is a sign of disrespect may cause heavy offense and consequences. So why? The why is one of Thailand's most distinguished rituals. It may be used in a variety of contexts depending on the position of individuals involved. In greeting, leave-taking, acknowledgement, or as a comment to an apology, a prayer-like motion with the hand and a small stoop of the head are common greeting gesture. An inviting attitude and friendly demeanor are conveyed with this greeting and accompanying smile. Touching someone on the head is considered very rude. when someone is of greater social status or older than you, it is considered disrespectful to put one's feet over their head. As a result, the Thai people regard the foot as the dirtiest and lowest body part, whereas the head is referred as the highest. Additionally, Thai people sit with their feet point away from others, tucked into the side or behind of them in order to avoid pointing to others. It is also considered disrespectful to point or touch anything with your foot. A peaceful approach is valued in Thai culture, where conflict and outbursts are prohibited. Because of this, visitors are advised to use care and not to show sign of hatred. Smile and avoid pointing the blame at anybody else when they are in an argument or confrontation. Thais place a high priority on sanuk, or concept that life should be joyful as a fundamental part of everyday life. Thus, Thai are recognized for their sense of humor, both at work and in their personal life. In their everyday life and friendship, Thais put great priority on happiness and positivity. A common phrase used by Thai is "it doesn't matter" or "ไม่เป็นไร" in the language, which they use to deal with a small disagreement or mistake. Using this sentence so often in Thailand demonstrates a desire to avoid fight and complaints, which is why it's so popular. ไม่เป็นไร convey an attitude of indifference and a lack of embarrassment with the use of a simple smile. The notion of face is a fundamental part of Thai culture and how people interact with each other. Face refers to a person or group's reputation, dignity, or honor. There are several methods to give face, including complimenting, showing respect, and increasing one's own self-esteem, among many more options. A person's face and shame may be damaged by pointing out mistakes, condemning them, or raising one's voice, among other things. As consequences, a person's face may be lost, preserved, or maintained. Now Jay will talk to you about technology.
Now let's move to the technology part. So since we have been in Thailand for quite very long entire of my life, I'm going to focus on interesting issue only. The first is one of the most controversial project at Rat Canal. This thing has been on debate for quite century. In order to make a decision, we have to weigh the risk and reward ratio, right? And the reward isn't seen to be that great, unlike Panama Canal or Suez Canal, which significantly cut the time that ship need to travel. In Rat Canal, it's only just this much, which is a day or two only. And there are also issues such as territory controlling and how hard is going to be construction, like physical barrier, because there are higher elevation ground around here, which means that it's going to be pretty hard to construct. Next up, I think this one is pretty interesting. Have you ever wondered why we have to stuck in traffic for so long? Why traffic in Bangkok is so bad? It's turned out is that in Bangkok, our city is not quite organized, and one main feature that we have is that there are a lot of soi tan road with dead end, which is one of the reasons why the traffic is so bad. In modern day, we have this one type of planning, cul-de-sac and grid. The modern one we usually use cul-de-sac, which is for like the older city that have developed in the past. This one, there is going to be some traffic issue. Next is our banking infrastructure, and when we talk about technology, I would like to talk about the online banking, which Thailand, when compared to the rest of the world, we can see that we are kind of advanced on online banking. And the good thing is that it is overseen by Bank of Thailand for the majority of the activity. However, there is also some risks, such as cyber risk, that Bank of Thailand say that didn't quite regulate the liability of each bank yet. So each of the different banks may have different policy about liability if something happens. So now let's move on. So before I talk about the misconception about taxation with cryptocurrency trading in Thailand, let me introduce you to the idea of decentralization. So decentralization, this is not the first time that decentralization happened. Decentralization have happened before in the past. The big one is the decentralization of information. So before the existence of the World Wide Web, the way to broadcast out is through newspaper, radios, or TV broadcast, you got it. But right now, since we have World Wide Web, people can go there, create domain, or even use platform to express their idea, give out the information to the public. Which means that every individual of us is actually now a media ourselves. So in the past, like it is controlled by a group of people, the people who work at TV station, radio station. But right now, everyone can present our information ourselves. So Bitcoin or cryptocurrency might be the next thing that's going to get decentralized. I mean, our currency, how we buy stuff, might be decentralized. So we might not be relying on fiat currency anymore. We might not be relying on government, the Bank of Thailand, the Fed anymore, because we have decentralized currency. This thing has been booming and booming. Yet it is still pretty young industry. So however, let's move on to the misconception of how taxation works when you go out and trade crypto. This is what Thailand has issued recently, that they have idea that they're gonna collect tax. So people believe that, for example, if you made 50 baht trading today, you're gonna write 50 baht on your income tax statement. And if, let's say next month you lost 100 baht, so now you are losing, you have the net loss, they claim that you still have to pay 50 baht on your income tax. But that is actually not true, because you can deduct your loss, and which means if the entire year you come out at you lost money, you don't have to pay income tax at all for the cryptocurrency. So now let's move on.
Now we will move on to the economic side of Thailand. We will start our analysis with inflation. These are the three most weighted factors: food and non-alcoholic beverages, transportation and communication, housing and furnishing. Now, up until December 2021, Thailand's inflation rate was gradually increasing from a mere 1.68% to 2.71%, before falling off to 2.17%. The gradual increase was stated to be the advent of increasing energy prices attributed to recovering economic activity, such as price for fuel as people begin to go to work again, and energy as production recovers. To follow, the drop, however, can be broken down by transport price, mainly by vehicles and vehicle operations, followed by a downdraft in the cost of housing. This reduction in overall costs helped the average citizen get by throughout the hardships brought upon them by COVID-19, which can be seen in the next economic indicator, unemployment. The labor market residing in Thailand has been severely affected due in part to the strict measures to control the spread of COVID-19, with the unemployment rate jumping from 1.96% to 2.25% in the previous 3 months. Now, of the unemployed, unemployment rate for those with a higher education was the highest, followed by vocational degrees holders. The agriculture sector saw a rise in employment by 1% as they are entering the start of the rice planting season. However, non-agriculture employment fell by 1.3%, the construction sector taking the hardest hit of all, accompanied by hotel and restaurant sectors, as a result of lack of demand. Meanwhile, in employment in manufacturing, transportation, wholesale and retail rose as people began to do most of their shopping online through Shopee and many of the famous apps. In spite of the recent statistics, Mr. Doncha of the government committee stated that the employment rate in the fourth quarter is likely to improve because of the country's reopening on January 1st. Of course, Mr. Doncha stated very clearly that this is only to come in the absence of resurgence of the COVID-19 infection. In this period of increasing unemployment, it is obvious that the country's GDP will be dragged down as well. Thailand's economy contracted by 1.1% in the third quarter of 2021. The shrinkage could be correlated to the spread of the Delta strain of the COVID-19 family, low vaccination rate, and global supply chain issue. To help counter this problematic decrease, we saw an increase in government spending for the second quarter through social transfers and expenses related to the pandemic. Thus, it is predicted by trading economics that GDP is to trend around 0.9 in 2022 and 1.2% in 2023. Now, we will move on to the economic disparity of Thailand. The topic of economic disparity has long been a discussion amongst nations all across the globe. Now, as of recently, the COVID-19 pandemic has ever highlighted the situation in Thailand. Chronically marginalized groups are contracting and passing away at higher rates. The city at Thammasat University has determined that around 80% of the real estate in Thailand is divided amongst the 5 richest percent. More than 2/3 of the country's wealth and asset is controlled by only 1% of the population. All the while, 6.2% of the population lies below the poverty line. The problem has only begun to be brought to light in the recent pandemic, as even more than before, workers have been put out of their job And all this translates to is a sharp decline in income and an increase in spending down on assets and saving as they struggle to pay for day-to-day expenses, leaving them all the more vulnerable to future crises. Now, with this dire situation, it is of the utmost importance to make Thailand's society more resilient to eventual crises. This goal requires Thailand to take on structural inequality today. Now, one of the first initiatives Thailand can take is to adopt lead the no man behind principle for all crisis response and recovery policy. This calls for strengthening of the social protection system as well as economic empowerment to support people, particularly those who are of the lower class and thriving, but just to sustain life in this pandemic. This additional step is likely to increase the situation of Thailand by much more. Now, additional steps can take, like increasing fiscal along with fair and efficient resources allocation to support investment necessary for inclusive growth. Now, Tanu will talk about the military.
Next up in the STEEP model, we'll be talking about the environment of Thailand. So the main idea is that due to Thailand's growth, its economic priorities took priority over the conservation of its resources. So what this means is that in the process of developing the country, many natural sites have been taken down or destroyed. However, there are some efforts to preserve them. So now we'll be talking about the biodiversity of Thailand. So Thailand has a moderately high level of biodiversity. According to the biodiversity index, Thailand has a number of 9.8, which is highest of the 5 Indo-China countries. So Thailand is home to 15 mountain ranges, 25 watersheds, and many more forests and mangroves. It is also home to 20,000 plant species and 10,000 flower species. However, these may be threatened due to the growing economy. For example, in between 1975 and 1993, the area of mangrove forests were halved due to the abundance and popularity of shrimp farms. So nowadays, there have been efforts to conserve these natural resources because they are essential. For example, the Khao Yai National Park. So next up is the agriculture of Thailand. Thailand is known as the rice bowl of Southeast Asia, with over 20.8 million hectares of fertile plains, and over 57% of which is rice. Speaking of rice, one of the most important uses of Thailand's natural resources is its cuisine. Often being described as one of the world's greatest culinary achievements, Thai cuisine is derived from its various diverse spices and vegetables and fruits. In addition to having all types of taste, it is considered very healthy and has various medicinal usage. Scientific studies have found that herbs in Thailand such as turmeric, lemongrass, coriander, and galangal are immensely healthy and are able to cure health conditions like indigestion and stomach ulcers. However, not everything is well and good since Thailand right now faces an energy crisis. As you can see, Thailand's energy usage mostly comes from non-renewable energies such as natural gas and coal. So due to the significant increase in demand, the non-renewable energies are running out. To counteract this, the government plans to increase the renewable energy such as water and wind from 8% to 30% by 2036. One of the other crises that Thailand is to face is the air pollution. Thailand is ranked 34th out of 106 countries for the most polluted country in 2020 according to the air quality index. The causes of which are from many sources like burning fossil fuels, construction, crop burning, usage of automobiles, and factories. As you can see in the map, the most polluted in 2020 can vary between the north, Mae Hong Son, Chiang Mai, or either the eastern part. The increasing urbanization coupled with the improper farming methods leads to a decline in water quality around the country. In 2016 alone, 6 billion cubic meters of waste from factories and 16 billion from farms were produced and dumped in the bodies of water. Water scarcity is also a crisis that Thailand will have to face, since the renewable water sources are quickly diminishing. As you can see in the graph, there is a clear inverse correlation between the rising population and the declining water source. Thus, Thailand is set to hit water scarcity by 2025. So what is being done to counteract these crises? In tandem with the US Sustainable Development Goals, Thailand is trying to follow the 12th National Economic and Social Development Plan starting from 2017. This plan would be used by other sectors such as the automobile sector and the energy sector to maintain the quality and the sustainability of the environment. So the next up for the state model, Khan will tell us about the economy of Thailand.
Hello everyone, this is come to my part. My part is Thai politics. Thai politics are governed by constitutional monarchy with the Prime Minister as the head of the government and the King as the head of the state. My name is Philip Lisa, and I'm going to talk about this chapter. This chapter will cover three main parts. The first one is the history of Thai politics, second one is the current political situation, and the third one is the ASEAN history with Thailand. The modern history of Thailand began with a coup d'etat that was led by Khanak Rasadon of People's Party, which featured Lady Phnom Yong and Luang Pribul Songkram. Khanak Rasadon had 102 people in the group. This group were the cause of an end to Ratanakosin kingdom, to the absolute monarchy, which was the power type of Thailand back then. It happened on June 24th, 1932. Transition was done by peace. However, Thailand's presidency was still limited because half of the members of the parliament were elected through nomination, and the political party was still prohibited back then to form back then. So, and there's an upback. But however, these political figures were that I mentioned earlier was Lady Phnom Yong and Luang Pribul Songkram. However, the aftermath of the revolution. So several young leaders tried to combine nationalism and military to gain power because they saw the instability after the revolution. But King Rama VII against this and tried to negotiate, but it failed. So in about a year later, King Rama VII abdicated the power to the King Rama VIII or King Mahidol, and then he moved to Switzerland and died. The story that I told you was when and how the modern Thai politics started. And here, I'm going to talk about the current situation of Thai politics. Even though Thai revolution in 1932 was still peaceful, but still, Thai political situation is still unstable, unreliable, and Thailand had 12 successful coups since then. The most recent one is it was led by Prayut Chan-o-cha. He was the commander of Thai army. The coup started in May 22nd of 2014. After the 6 months of political turmoil, because there was a protest began in 1930, and in November 2013. The protest was led by Suthep Suban. He was a former Democrat Party Secretary General. He later founded the group of the People's Democratic Change Committee, or PDRC, or in Thai it's called PPPS, to against the government, and the purpose is to political reform. Suthep also pointed the reason to remove Thaksin's power from Thai politics. And as we can see, upper class and middle class, or even the professors from top universities in Thailand also joined this movement. The cause was when Yingluck Shinawatra and Third Thai Party won a landslide election in 2011, and later they formed a government as the Prime Minister. But the protest ended when Prayut told Suthep that you and your PDRC masses supporters are too tired, and now it is up to the army to take up the mission. As of right now, the Prayut is the Prime Minister of Thailand for over 8 years. Next, I'm going to talk about the ASEAN story with Thailand. As you can see, it was founded in 1967, and along with Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore, also Thailand was a founding member. It was also known as the Bangkok Declaration because it was signed at Saladong Park in Bangkok on the August 8, 1967. The purpose is to promote peace, accelerate economic growth, social progress, and cultural development. And as you can see, the starting member of ASEAN was 5 countries, but now 10 countries. Here is the relationship of each country in ASEAN to Thailand. Brunei, we have the diplomatic relationship since 1984 and collaborated in agriculture, halal production, and energy. With Malaysia, we have embassies in both countries, which is Kuala Lumpur and Bangkok. We cooperate in trade and investment, security and defense, food and sport and tourism. With Myanmar, we have been involved in conflict for a long time, but after the coup in Myanmar, Thailand is one of the only few countries that try to make a relationship with Myanmar. Next is Philippines. We have diplomatic relationship since 1949, and Philippines is the most important trading partner to Thailand. Singapore, we have a strong connection in economics, defense, and technical collaboration. Cambodia, we have connections since the 15th century, but the modern day connection started in 1959. In Indonesia, Thailand and Indonesia have a relationship since 1950, but Indonesia has a friendly relationship to Thailand, and now the relationship is seen as a natural ally because we have no conflict over soil for a while. And then Vietnam used to be a temporary rival in Vietnam War, but we are friendly in diplomatic relations after the Doi Moi reform revolution in 1986, and we also have embassies in both countries, Hanoi and Bangkok. The last country is Laos. Laos is usually from neighboring countries to Thailand. Thailand maintained the relationship since 15th century. We are similar in linguistically, culturally, but in the modern day, Laos and Thailand established diplomatic relations in 1950. Next chapter, soon we'll be talking about the military. Thank you for listening.
Alright, in this part we'll be discussing about the military of Thailand, which includes this discussion, we'll be including 3 main branches, some common knowledge about them, and also some common knowledge about the military as well. So let's first start with what is the main military forces of Thailand. So the Thai Royal Armed Forces, or Gong Thap Thai, is Thailand's main military body. Since its establishment in 1852, back then it was first organized in order to become the modernized European style military forces, to defend the Siam Kingdom at the time against foreigners' aggression. So next is about the roles of the military. The major roles, and mostly obviously one of the main objective of most military forces around the world is protecting its country's sovereignty. The Thai Royal Armed Forces are also concerned with protecting the kings, the nation, and the religion as well, which is like the main, which is like the military identity in Thailand. But it also does some sort of general peacekeeping duties around the countries as well, especially in the area with high insurgent activity, such as some part of the southern Thailand and a lot of places along the borders. About the personnel, the military forces consist of around 456,000 individuals. The reserve forces include as well, and from that, there are around 1,700 officers, which are considered to be a very high number compared to like countries like US or China with a lot of military personnel, or just simply a very big military. And another thing is that like almost a quarter of that amount of the 400,000 individuals are from the annual conscriptions system, which is like one of the main ways that the military gets its manpower annually. Next, we'll be discussing about the budget. As we can see from the graph, during the pandemic, you can see a sharp decline in budget, in the defense budget between the 2019 and 2020. But there's also a speculation that it might get a rebound after the pandemic in 2022 or maybe 23 if things just get better. But on the other hand, still the weapon procurements are rising, which is kind of weird. In the 2020, which is like the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of this can be seen from the news, such as the new submarines deal with China, or even like the strikers APC. Alright, next we're gonna talk about the Thai Royal Army, which is like the main branch of the armed forces. It is one of the largest and also oldest branch, dating back to the Ayutthaya era, when there was not really an organized military forces. There were just like the army and like a lot of support branches. Comparing to the other nations, the neighbors of Thailand, it is considered to be very big and very strong. Compared to Myanmar, which also has a very big military forces as well, it's equally matched in terms of numbers of troops and equipments, vehicles. Next is the Thai Royal Air Forces. It is one of the earliest air forces of Asia, established even before the World War I. And as of now, it consists of around 469 aircrafts, including transport helicopters and interceptors or jets, which is one of the largest among its Southeast Asian neighbors. The last but not least is the Royal Thai Navy, with one of the biggest navy in the world, ranked at 9th place. And it is also responsible for controlling mostly the Gulf of Thailand, but also some part of the Indian Ocean as well. But mainly it concerns with the Gulf of Thailand, and its main base is in Sattahip. And it's also the only navy in the Southeast Asia with a carrier, but it's not really a carrier, it's a helicopter carrier. Yeah, that's all about the military. So we're gonna move on to the next part, which is the conclusion. Alright, and that will be the end of the STEAM analysis presentation about Thailand. I would say it's a pretty well-rounded country with a lot of potential for growth and development. And with this STEAM analysis, we hope to give you a better insight about the countries and things to allow you to make decisions for yourself. And if you have the means, choose the right path that will lead Thailand to a greater future. Thank you very much.